Okay then, what do you have that can help me this time? I'm assuming that you know my current situation within the family, she said, indicating that she had agreed to the deal. First, I will tell you something that will help you not fall in the same situation you are currently in for the third time again, Aaron said, and stopped for a short period to create suspense. When he was sure that Rena was concentrating, he said, "Your security team's head is working for your brother." Aaron went directly with an uppercut, but he wanted to elaborate a little more, so he added, "Not work for him purse, but he reports everything you do to him." Despite being deeply upset by the news, Rena concealed her emotions and patiently waited for Aaron to explain his reasoning for believing what he said was truly happening. She was not quick to believe everything Aaron said without significant evidence to support his claims. Instead of continuing with his explanation, Aaron retrieved his phone from his pocket and handed it over to Rena. She received it and just stared at it without saying anything, wanting to know the reason why he gave her the phone. After glancing at the still-locked phone screen for a short while, and when nothing happened, Rena inquired with a hint of anger in her voice, "Are you messing with me?" She had the outburst because the person Aaron told her she was betraying was one of her most trusted bodyguard who had been with her since her high school years. "Have some patience, can you?" Aaron said, and immediately the phone suddenly began playing a recording of a phone call that had taken place moments after Rena had entered the building. The recording played on as Rena listened in stunned silence. Aaron watched her carefully, his expression unreadable. "Who is she meeting?" a voice on the other end of the recording asked. "I'm still trying to find out who the person is, as he came earlier than us," the other person replied, their tone respectful and deferential. "I will have the hotel hand us the footage of him so that we can find his details." There was a pause on the recording, and Rena could almost hear the woman on the other end of the line seething with impatience. "I need all the report of the meeting by the end of the day," she snapped. The other person hesitated for a moment, and then replied, "Yes, ma'am. I will do as ordered." But before the reply could even be completed, the call was abruptly ended, leaving no doubt that the woman on the other end of the line had little to no respect for the person she was speaking to. Rena's face was etched with disappointment and disbelief as she listened to the audio recording. She recognized the voices immediately. It was a conversation between her head bodyguard and her brother's secretary. Although she knew her brother was watching her every move, she didn't expect her head bodyguard to be the one who was watching her for him. The betrayal was more hurtful due to it being from her longtime, most trusted bodyguard who had been with her since high school. "Since when has he been reporting to my brother?" she asked Aaron, her voice quivering with emotion as she tried to hide her hurt feelings. "A month after you were married to Ratem." A reply came not from Aaron but from the phone, causing Rena to gasp in shock and nearly drop the phone. "Is this one of those assistants in the phones that is popular these days?" Rena asked after she recollected herself from the surprise. "Although my company made the said famous assistant, this one is similar but more advanced than it," Aaron explained to the now curious Rena. Rena was quite surprised that Aaron was the owner of the now famous GIA technology. Although she read the report about it, she didn't really put it in her mind because she was fighting for her position in the family. "I will think about it later," she said, and decided to continue her questioning. "The reason for it?" Rena asked the phone this time, after hearing Aaron's explanation. The voice on the phone explained, "Ambition. He was promised a position of CEO of the security company responsible for your family's security when he officially became the family head. He agreed to do it because all he had to do was report on everything you do, which was very easy for him, as he is your head of security." "I should have known," she murmured, feeling a sense of regret wash over her. "All those times I asked for my bodyguards to investigate Ratem, and the results always coming back as negative. So it was him who was preventing me from leaving the forced marriage." Aaron could hear the pain and disappointment in Rena's voice. As Rena processed the shocking revelation, she couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: anger, disappointment, and a sense of betrayal. She had trusted her head of security, the man who was supposed to keep her safe, only to find out that he had been reporting everything she did to her brother behind her back. It was a bitter pill to swallow. She let out a bitter smile as she recalled how she had asked her head bodyguard to investigate the matter. Little did she know that she was essentially asking the mole to find himself. She couldn't believe she had been so blind to the truth. Aaron remained quiet, giving Rena time to come to terms with the information. He knew it was a lot to process, and he didn't want to push her too hard. He had booked the room for the entire day, so he had plenty of time to wait for her to compose herself. Half an hour later, she finally returned to the room after half an hour to continue their meeting. Although she was not over the betrayal, she at least managed to recollect herself and return to a position where they can continue their meeting. "Sorry for making you wait," she apologized as she returned from the bathroom, trying her best to hide the turmoil she was feeling inside. "No problem. I would have been more surprised if you felt nothing after hearing the news," Aaron replied, offering her a small smile. He could see that Rena was still reeling from the shock, but he knew that he had to help her regain her composure so that they could continue with their discussion. "Before we begin with any of the plans that I have in my mind, you need to first finish cleaning the moles in your house to avoid further interference," Aaron said, his tone serious. He knew that for them to move forward without interference, she needed to remove all the planted spies within her household. Rena nodded in understanding. She knew that her brother had always been ruthless when it came to securing his position within the family, and she couldn't afford to underestimate him for the third time. "After you are done with the cleaning, we will officially begin to wage war with your brother in order to regain your position," Aaron continued. During the entire time, Rena did nothing other than listen to Aaron's explanation. When he was done, she asked, "What information do you have that will help in returning to my position after I finish cleaning the moles within my house?" Wanting to know what kind of information or plan did Aaron have to make him as confident as he was. As Aaron saw no reason to hide his information, as he is currently the only one who can help her from her predicament, as everyone else in the family has either sided with her brother or remained neutral, not wanting to participate in any of the family fights. "The Morgans are preparing for a rematch with your family, and I have more than half of their battle plans. I will soon have the complete plan with me. Is that enough?" "What?" Rena couldn't control herself this time and shouted in surprise due to the weight of the information she received. Rena was taken aback by the information. The fact that the Morgans were preparing for a rematch was not that surprising, but them being nearly or almost ready was enough to send shivers down her spine. Both families expected each other to be preparing themselves for a rematch, but her family's planning team had speculated that the Morgans would need more time to recover in order for them to be ready for another round. Despite that assumption, they had tried to plant spies in the Morgans family, and despite succeeding in infiltration, they never received the news of Morgans preparing for the war. This meant that they had put that much importance to the plan's secrecy to the point of assuring that it remains a secret even if there are spies among them. This lack of knowledge made Rena feel vulnerable and exposed. If the Morgans were indeed preparing for a rematch and her family was not prepared for it and were caught off guard, the consequences would be catastrophic. They would be massacred without mercy, and there would be little they could do to defend themselves. The thought of such a devastating defeat filled Rena with fear and dread. She knew it would be the first of its kind, meaning she couldn't think of the catastrophe that would be caused. It might even lead to a more devastating economic crisis, far worse than the 2008 financial crisis that resulted from their last war with the Morgans, which they won. What frightened her even more was the fact that Aaron had managed to obtain this information. Not only did he know about the Morgans' plans, but he also knew everything about their strategy and tactics. Rena couldn't help but wonder how he had managed to gather such detailed intelligence and what he planned to do with it. For the first time, Rena began to see Aaron in a different light. She had always known that he was cunning and resourceful, but now she realized just how dangerous he could be. She couldn't help but wonder what other secrets he was keeping from her, and whether or not she could trust him completely. Despite her reservations, Rena knew that she had little choice but to work with Aaron if she wanted to regain her position within the family. She took a deep breath and tried to push her fears aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. With Aaron's help, she knew that they could come up with a plan to face the Morgans and emerge victorious. Rena was acutely aware of the gravity of the situation, and so she posed the crucial question to Aaron: "Will we have enough time to prepare countermeasures?" She asked Aaron after apologizing for her earlier outburst, but this time her voice carried a hint of fear and respect. She knew that even with the information they had obtained, it would be worthless if they didn't have enough time to plan and prepare for the Morgans' inevitable attack. It would be akin to knowing that death was coming, but being unable to do anything about it. With Rena's anxiety palpable, Aaron remained calm and composed as he answered her question. The countermeasures to their plan are being constantly reviewed and revised as we receive the remaining pieces of information, Aaron explained. You don't have to worry about it. I'm on top of it. Rena felt a wave of relief wash over her upon hearing this. The knowledge that a plan was in place and constantly being updated to account for any new information gave her hope that they might have a fighting chance against the Morgans. I will provide you with the complete plan once you have finished removing the moles, Aaron added, reassuring her once more. Rena sought further clarification and asked, Do you have other means of communication other than the email? Aaron pointed at the phone that was still in her hands since he handed it to her and said, Through that. Using it, you will always be able to reach me. It will also help you find out the remaining moles among those that are working for you. All you have to do is connect the phone to your family's private network. He decided to give her the phone that had an AI written by Nova, because if he tried infiltrating from the outside, there would always be a risk of being discovered no matter how stealthy he tried to be. This was because they were monitoring every connection coming from outside, no matter how useless it was. He didn't stop with that and continued his explanation. Keep in mind that the moment you connect the phone to your family's network, the entire network will be visible both to you and me. The AI within the device will help you organize the information it collects from the network and inform you of them. Additionally, it would monitor the family's network and keep you updated on any communications or developments among the members. This feature will provide you with leverage over any individuals involved, which will be paramount for your return to power within the family. Furthermore, since the network's secureness is believed by everyone within the family, no one would suspect it, allowing you access to the latest information. This would give you even more leverage, allowing you to amass more power as time goes on. When Rena heard those words from Aaron, her heart rate increased by more than 10%. She couldn't determine the exact reason for her increased heart rate, but she was curious whether it was due to excitement, hope, amazement, or if she had developed feelings for Aaron. Only time would reveal the truth. All of this was caused by her realizing that Aaron's plan was always 10 steps ahead of his imaginary enemy. Sure, I will inform you when I'm done with the cleanup, Rena replied while trying to act as calm as she could manage with the orchestra going in his heart. Aaron noticed that something was off with her, but he assumed that she was still affected by the news of her trusted bodyguard's betrayal. Thus, he decided to set it aside and continued with their conversation. Rena was in a car heading home. What an emotional roller coaster. Rena murmured to herself in a hushed tone as she remembered her meeting with Aaron. She went to the meeting expecting to repay the favor, but in return she received something much more than she expected. Rena couldn't help but look at her head of security, sitting on the front seat of the car she was in. Is there something wrong? Asked the bodyguard when he discovered through the rear view mirror that Miss Rena was looking at him. Nothing, Rena replied while continuing to keep eye contact with the bodyguard for a short period of time before looking somewhere else. How should I deal with you? Rena started contemplating how she was going to do the cleanup. It needed to be stealth enough to not attract her brother's attention, which might backfire on her if he discovers that he knows who the moles are. Let's find out who they are first, then we can think on how to dispose of them or on how I can use them to divert my brother's attention after that. She did nothing other than look outside the window throughout the journey to avoid raising any suspicion in her bodyguard's mind. Rena could be seen in her office with the phone given to her by Aaron in her hand. She decided to wait until she was left alone in the workroom before she even removed the phone from her handbag. She opened the phone's Wi-Fi and chose the family's Wi-Fi that led to the private network in which all the family members use it to access the internet securely. She powered on the phone and accessed the Wi-Fi settings, selecting her family's Wi-Fi network. This network was connected to a private network that all family members use to access the internet outside securely. After entering the lengthy and complicated password, she clicked on the Connect. The moment she pressed the Connect button, the phone displayed a message. Network connection initiated. Initiating network takeover. Estimated takeover time, 1 day. Looking for ways to expedite the takeover time to reduce the risk of discovery. Nearby device found. Miss, I need permission to use your computer as an additional computing node to increase computing power and efficiency in order to complete the network takeover faster. The AI asked for permission to use her computer. Do whatever you need. Rena agreed to the AI's request without an ounce of hesitation. The moment the AI received permission from Rena, it transferred itself to the computer and immediately took control of the computer. After it completed its migration, it immediately started the move of infecting the devices that were within the network. It did this by acting as a data packet being sent from one device to another. The moment the receiving device tries to reconstruct the data packets, the AI will immediately take control of the device without raising any suspicion. After infiltrating a few devices in the network, the AI finally identified one of the servers that housed and managed the private network. Realizing the criticality of this discovery, the AI ceased all its other infiltration attempts and switched to a targeted attack on the server. The AI immediately started port scanning and network enumeration. The AI probed the server's defenses to identify the weaknesses and vulnerabilities. After finding a few of them, it followed by launching a series of highly coordinated attacks that leveraged exploits and malware designed to penetrate the server's defenses undetected. Once inside the server, the AI was able to bypass network segmentation and gain access to all connected devices and backup servers, finalizing the takeover of the entire private network. But despite having unprecedented access to the entirety of the network and could access all the backed up data, they were all encrypted and the decryption keys were not in the server's memory. To overcome this challenge, the AI employed a clever solution. It first collected all the prime number sequences that were required for decryption and compiled them into an Excel sheet. The AI then sent the Excel sheet to Nova. The AI sent it to Nova for her to use her immense computing power of the quantum computer to analyze the prime number sequences and come up with the decryption key. With the key, the AI will be able to unlock the encrypted data and gain access to the valuable information within. Now all the AI had to do was wait for Nova to return her the decryption key. While all this was happening, Rena only saw her computer screen power on, followed by nothing happened for a while. Then the Microsoft Excel in her computer was opened and a list of endless numbers started being written down on the Excel. After about 5 minutes of numbers being endlessly written down on the Excel, it was then saved, which was followed by her email app being opened. The AI then sent the email with the Excel sheet attached to an email address that seemed endless. What was that email for, and who was it sent to? She asked in curiosity. It was an Excel sheet with the prime numbers needed to be decoded for us to know the decryption key in order to access the backed up data that is saved in the servers. It was sent to Sir Aaron for Mother to decrypt them and send us the decryption key. Mother? Rena asked as she was surprised that the AI called someone its mother. I call the AI that made me mother because embedded in my code is her existence as my parent. So you tell me that there is a more powerful AI than you that can create AIs that are as powerful as you? Although many things attracted her attention from the AI's reply, this was what caught the most of her attention. Yes. Then who made your mother? She asked the second thing that attracted her attention. Sir Aaron. By himself? That seems impossible. She couldn't help but be surprised by the reply. Yes, by himself. Holy shit, is the only thing that came to her mind. Although she was not a professional programmer, she knew what she heard was nearly impossible, because for their family's pirate network to continue working without interference, they were hiring more than 500 programmers to ensure everything was working in order. But you're telling her that the powerful AI was made by just one person? Holy shit. Then why did you tell me that? Shouldn't it be a secret or something? This time she asked because she felt something weird from the way the AI was being way too honest with its answers. The last order given to me by Mother was that I should be helpful to you. Also, this is not considered anything too confidential. Your current clearance permits me telling you this information. When Rena heard this reply, her heart warmed a little from the trust she received from Aaron. Then what else are you allowed to tell me? She wanted to know what other information was she allowed to access from the AI. The list is too long, madam, but the summary of it is that you can ask me anything, and as long as it is not above your clearance, I will reply to you honestly with the latest information, and if it is above your clearance, I will tell you it is. Just call me Rena, she said as she was getting tired of hearing madam and miss. Yes, Rena. The AI agreed without hesitating for even a second. Okay, then what is your name? My mother's given name is Ava, which has its roots in Sanskrit where it means offering protection. It is also derived from the Russian language, where it means a gift, and from Swedish, where it is associated with the concept of providing strength or power. The name Ava represents a special gift from Sir Aaron, who gave me to you with the intention of providing you help with strength and protection. When Rena heard this, she was enamored, and fuck is the only word that came from her mouth while she was trying to fan herself as she felt the room got a little bit hotter. So Ava, how is the infiltration going on? She asked, trying to change the topic. The infiltration is complete. At the moment, I'm waiting for Mother to send me the decryption key so that I can decrypt and analyze all the backed up data. How about the current data? Due to that being intercepted after the devices were infected, there is no need to decrypt them. So I'm collecting it and analyzing it in real time, but since I have been collecting the data for a short period of time, nothing of importance has happened during the time. Okay. With that, Rena left the room to have a nap as she was very exhausted from the roller coaster of emotion she had felt today. Aaron could be seen looking through the art pieces in the San Jose Museum of Art. He decided to visit the museum after he came out of a phone store to buy himself a new one, after he gave his previous phone to Rena for them to keep contact. He wasn't worried that his information and other important things would be lost or would be leaked, because Nova solved all of these things without him needing to say anything. As he was looking at the arts within the museum, his new phone started vibrating, indicating that she had something to report to him. Aaron knew this was a way for Nova to inform him that she wants to report something to him when he is in a public location to avoid attracting people's attention. He removed his phone from his pocket and put it on his ear to act like he was on a phone call, continuing the facade that it was a phone call. "What is it?" Aaron asked Nova after placing the phone on the ear. "Sir, Ava has reported back," Nova reported. "Well, that was fast of her. I thought she would hesitate to connect the phone to their private network. The fastest I expected her to do it was maybe tomorrow morning after she thought about it throughout the night. I thought so as well, but my estimate was today evening or night. It seems like she is more pressed than we thought." "Yeah, I thought so as well. What did Ava report?" "She reported nothing, but just sent an email with an Excel sheet full of prime numbers for me to decode it in order to derive the decryption key from it for her to access the encrypted backup information." "How is that going on?" he asked as he was amused by the idea of Ava using an email to ask help from Mom when she found herself to be in a bind. "I've completed deriving the decryption key and sent it to her a moment ago. So when will she be done with the decryption of the data?" "It is expected for her to be done with the decryption within a week's time. She decided to do it slowly so that she doesn't want to raise suspicion. Although she could manipulate the data being shown by the servers, she can't manipulate the increase in power consumption. If they discover anything suspicious, she risks the entire system's overhaul, increasing the chances of all the backed up data being lost in the process. So, she chose the slow approach." "Sure, let her take her time," Aaron said as he continued moving around within the museum. "Also, someone is following you," Nova informed him after she infiltrated the museum network and accessed the museum's live camera feed using the watch in Aaron's hands. "Who is he?" Aaron asked as he continued looking around as he was still clueless. "He is currently reporting to the same person the head bodyguard reported, Rena's brother's secretary. It seems like he was sent to collect more information about you. From their conversation, they seem to have found the fake information about you and deemed you not important enough for further investigation. They will leave you alone if nothing interesting happens today." Nova explained everything about the one following him as fast as she could. "Add him to the list of people in which Rena would take care after she returned in power." Coldly, he pronounced judgment on the pursuer, dooming him to a hell that was delayed only by a timer that was rapidly approaching its end with each passing second. Meanwhile, in Aaron's house, Henry, who had returned from school, started getting bored from playing with his toys. So, he started thinking about things that he could do to alleviate his boredom. That's when he remembered that his brother had a virtual reality headgear. "Let's go and see what it does." With enthusiasm, he stood and started heading to the basement with fast steps as he couldn't wait to try it. From what his brother told him, it was the same as those in movies, so he should be able to play games that are similar to the ones in movies. After he finally entered the room, he found the headgear on the table where his brother usually keeps it when he is not using it. Without wasting even a second, he put it on, and remembering what the people from the movies said to start using it, he said, "Login." After waiting for a few seconds, nothing happened. So, he just removed the headgear and put it back on the same place he found it while being extremely disappointed. "It is either I don't know how to use it, or my brother was playing with me," is what came to his mind. At the moment, he was leaning toward the first assumption that he doesn't know how to use it. This was caused by him trusting his brother after he kept every promise he gave to him. Since his plan had failed and he had nothing else to do in the basement, he decided to go and play with his brother's PlayStation, as his was still being confiscated by her mother after he was caught playing games when he was supposed to be sleeping. While all this was happening, Nova was just watching everything unfold through the cameras in the room without interfering. After Henry entered the room, she started monitoring his every action so that she could report to Aaron if something bad happened. When he put on the VR headgear, she thought nothing would happen since Aaron hasn't shown him how to activate it. But all of her assumptions were thrown out of the window when she heard Henry say "login," which forced her to intervene and cancel the activation sequence to prevent Henry from hurting himself. She had to intervene due to Henry still being in a standing position when he initiated the login sequence, which would have resulted in him being hurt by falling down due to the loss of consciousness. But other than Henry's login into the virtual world being interfered with and canceled by her, everything before that had already been completed before she could intervene and cancel the login attempt. This meant that Henry's brain was already mapped and everything about it being recorded and saved by the virtual reality program as per its protocols. And since his brain didn't have a system to prevent it like Aaron, nothing remained hidden from Nova, who had access to all of the data collected by the VR headgear. So, she started analyzing Henry's brain out of curiosity to see if there is anything special in him like his brother. And there it was. Henry's eye nerves were glowing golden. The golden glow was similar to Aaron's golden blood, but Henry's was not blood. It was occurring only on his eye nerves and the location in the brain where the brain interpreted what his was seeing. When she discovered this, she decided to find out what Henry sees as the result of his nerves glowing golden. When she took the POV of Henry's eyes and started simulating different thing in front of them, she discovered that Henry had eyes that allowed him, if he paid enough attention, to see most of the things normal humans can't see. This included magical energy in the atmosphere. The result of him paying enough attention is his irises turning golden, allowing him to see unseen within his vicinity. One of the occasions where Henry saw the unseen is when he saw his brother's room after he was shot. It appeared to him that there was a golden liquid mixed with normal blood on the floor, but when he asked his mother about it, she said there was no such thing, as she had helped clean the blood and saw nothing like that. After reading through some of the memories, Nova started looking for the trigger that caused this evolution, and she found it. It was the day Aaron entered a deep slumber, which resulted in his body gaining golden blood and blood vessels that would later be merged for him to gain runic body. The trigger for the evolution was the high concentration of magical energy within a small space, causing his eyes to be overloaded with magical energy, resulting in a forced evolution to avoid going blind. But this doesn't mean that if you put someone in a room with high magical energy concentration that they will evolve. No, the chances are very small, and that's one of the reasons Aaron's system did not inform him about it. This evolution was everything but normal. His body's reaction was way too excessive for it to be caused by just magical energy overload. Something else must have helped or interfered to push for this specific outcome. She decided to inform Aaron when he came back home, but she still continued with her investigation looking for what caused Henry's eyes to evolve. Later that day, Aaron finally returned back home at night after he finished his tour of the museum and headed immediately for the basement after having dinner with his parents. Henry seemed to have been found sleeping while playing a game in his room, resulting in him not being on the dinner table to eat with them. "Welcome, sir." Nova welcomed him after he entered the basement. "Thanks. Anything new?" he asked after he thanked Nova while putting on his virtual helmet and laying down on his makeshift bed. "Yes." Nova immediately replied his question when she came face to face with him in virtual reality. "What is it?" Henry seemed to have evolved. "What? What do you mean by evolve?" he asked in panic, showing that he was pretty scared by the news. "Don't worry, sir. It's nothing dangerous," Nova replied, trying to calm Aaron down. "Elaborate is the only word he said, followed by him shutting up, waiting for explanation. "So here is what happened. Henry entered the basement." Nova now started explaining everything to Aaron while using both his memories and Henry's as a presentation materials to ensure that nothing is left out. "Hoo-hoo. Thank God." Aaron released a sigh of relief after Nova finished explaining everything and reassuring him. "So, You're telling me that my brother can see magical energy and anything to do with magic? Yes, but that is not all. From my simulation of his abilities, he can see more than just magic. He should be able to adjust the spectrum of light that his eyes collects, allowing him to see even at night without difficulty. But that is not all. He should be able to see supernatural entities and many more. And if you become proficient in your runic abilities and turn him into a runic user, they will evolve even more. I suspect that he will gain special body that has its focus on eyes or something similar to that. So you're telling me that my brother can see ghosts and other entities? Currently, his brain can't handle the influx of information, resulting on all the features being kept inactive by his subconsciousness to prevent him harming himself. As for the ability to see magical energy, he can only keep it active for a few seconds at most before he runs out of mental energy to supply them. Thank God. Just imagine him having to see ghosts and other supernatural things while he is still young. There is no amount of therapy that would fix that damage, Aaron said while being relieved that his brother was not yet traumatized by his abilities. Keep an eye on him and continue to test the limit of his abilities. Yes, sir. Now back to practicing runes. Aaron said this as he started moving to the Rashomon gate in order to enter the accelerated universal simulation to continue his runic practice. And what rune are you going to practice this time? Nova asked Aaron as she followed and tried to keep up her pace with his. When Aaron turned around and discovered that she was having a hard time keeping up with him, he slowed his pace down, then answered her question. I need something to protect myself. So, this time I will be practicing a protection rune. Is it the shield rune? Rena asked as she finally reached Aaron and started walking shoulder to shoulder with him as they went through the gate. Yes, although I have bodyguards to protect me, I need something to ensure my safety even when I'm left alone. After passing through the gate and entering the accelerated universal simulation, he immediately sat down cross-legged and started to concentrate in order to begin his runic practice. And just like his first time training runes, the runic lines in his synapses lit up and started guiding him to the right path. After 8 hours of non-stop concentration, he extended his hand to his front and said, Shield. The runic word with the meaning shield appeared in front of his hands, glowing in golden before a thin, transparent wall, appeared in front of the runic word. With the appearance of the transparent shield in front of him, the glowing runic word started losing its luster as the shield kept sucking magical energy from it to sustain the shield in front of it. When Aaron saw this, he started pumping magical energy into the glowing runic word to allow the shield to continue existing. Continue sustaining, he said to Nova, who immediately took over the magical fueling of the rune. Aaron then left the vicinity of the runes and went near Nova. Now let's start testing it, he said while rubbing his hands in excitement. Yes, sir. Nova affirmed and immediately materialized a pistol, Glock 19 out of nowhere. Put a human being behind the shield so that we can see if the shield mitigates all the damages, Aaron said as he loaded a bullet to the chamber. Nova said nothing but immediately materialized a human behind the shield with the face of his shooter, causing Aaron to look at Nova in a questioning gaze, wanting to know the reason. If it fails, at least it will harm someone you won't feel guilt harming. Nova explained her reasoning for materializing this specific person. Anyway, let's start our testing, Aaron shrugged, acting as if he didn't care, but Nova knew that this man's life was hanging on a thread, which will be cut by Aaron the moment his main plan is completed. Yes, sir. Nova agreed. Aaron raised his hand and bang, bang, bang. He started firing at his shooter without stopping until the entire magazine was emptied. When he emptied the magazine, he just turned and looked at Nova. Nova said nothing and just materialized a shotgun, Remington 870, and handed it to Aaron, who took it and started pumping and firing the shotgun at the shield. After finishing with the shotgun, Aaron turned to Nova once again. Nova said nothing, and she just continued to materialize weapons out of thin air, summoned an AR-15 and handed it to Aaron, who without saying a word resumed firing without even pausing to inspect the condition of the shield. This routine continued for an extended period, with Nova conjuring an array of weapons including the Heckler & Koch MP5 submachine gun, the FN M249 SAW light machine gun, the M2 Browning heavy machine gun, and many others. Despite the relentless barrage of gunfire, the shield held strong and showed no sign of weakening. Aaron then moved on to RPGs, explosives, tanks, missiles, and other increasingly lethal weapons. However, even the detonation of the powerful big boy nuclear bomb in front of the shield did not cause it to falter. Throughout the ordeal, the shield remained resolute and steadfast, impervious to all forms of attack. Now let's hear the report from what you recorded, Aaron said as he removed the protection goggles he wore to protect his eyes from the explosion. Everything about it was useless as Nova made the location they were an indestructible zone, meaning that nothing that would harm them would enter their vicinity. Yes, sir, Nova said as she materialized a chair for Aaron to sit and a hologram for her to do her presentation. Thanks, Aaron said as he sat down on the chair materialized by Nova. After seeing that Aaron had already sat down, she immediately started giving the presentation. Based on the gathered data, it appears that the shield rune is capable of holding its ground as long as it maintains sufficient energy levels. The greater the force of impact it endures, the more energy is required to neutralize it. While it is theoretically possible for the shield to withstand a nuclear explosion, the sheer magnitude of energy required to do so is enormous. In summary, the shield rune can serve as a formidable defense against virtually any threat, as long as it is supplied with the necessary energy to withstand the level of damage it faces. Aaron continued listening to the entirety of the presentation, in which throughout the entire presentation his face continued getting brighter and brighter the more details he heard. Good, now that we know it is really useful. It is time for me to finish the practice of the rune to reduce the activation time to nanoseconds, Aaron said as he stood from the chair materialized by Aaron and returned to his practice location where he sat cross-legged and restarted his practice of the shield rune. Somewhere in the world, with the total tallied votes being 6 against and 1 in favor, the decision to deny the help and not respond to them has passed, said William, the one who would be considered the leader of the meeting. As Alexander gazed around the table, a deep sense of disappointment etched on his face. While most of the revolutionary group had begun their journey with a genuine desire to liberate their country from the grip of the tyrant, many had succumbed to the allure of wealth and luxury once they attained positions of power. This was particularly disheartening considering the fact that the money that they used for their luxuries and desires was from the donations of the people who had worked so hard to earn it while living in the oppressive and corrupt country, in the hopes that they could bring an end to the cruel and uncaring government. But all of their donations were used for nothing other than paying for revolutionary group leaders and higher-ranking members' luxurious lives. It was clear to Alexander that for some of the individuals at the table, the continued existence of the dictator was seen as a boon rather than a burden. As long as the dictator remained in power, they would always have a source of income and a reason to demand more money from those who want the dictatorship to end. Despite their outward appearance of attempting to save the country from the brutal dictatorship, the individuals in question had done little of any real significance to justify the exorbitant amount of money they had received. It seemed that much of their efforts had been focused on self-preservation and personal gain, rather than the greater good of the people they claimed to represent. The families of all the revolutionary leaders had chosen to reside outside the country of Eden. When questioned about this decision, the leaders had explained that they made this sacrifice to protect their loved ones from being used as pawns and held hostage to force their compliance. This response had elicited a sense of pride from the people, as they believed they had chosen wise and responsible leaders. However, little did they know the true reasons behind the decision. In reality, the revolutionary leaders spent most of their time with their families abroad, returning to Eden only once or twice, and often conducting meetings from the comfort of luxurious hotels, like the one in America where Alexander now found himself. It was clear to him that the leaders had grown accustomed to the lavish lifestyle and had lost touch with the struggles of the people they claimed to represent. The behavior of the revolutionary leaders had left Alexander feeling frustrated and angry. He could no longer bear to be in the same room with them, and so he stood up abruptly and began to make his way towards the door. One of the 6 individuals sitting at the table stopped him in his tracks with a question. "Where are you going?" "Washroom." "Is there a problem with that? I thought the meeting had ended." "No, the meeting isn't over," replied William, the de facto leader with the largest revolutionary group, in a condescending tone. "That was just the first agenda item. We still have a few more topics to discuss." Alexander's frustration grew as he questioned the man. "Like what? And why wasn't I informed about the other topics? As far as I remember, Everything that would be discussed in a meeting must be given to the attendees at least a day before the meeting to allow them to prepare. His voice now carried a hint of anger. We need to discuss our need for more donations to prepare for the next protest, William replied, ignoring his second question like it did not exist. Alexander challenged the man's proposal. Didn't we just collect donations 2 months ago? We haven't used any of it yet. Why are we asking for another round of donations? We need the money for our expenses, the man explained. Though the amount they donated seemed like a lot, most of it was lost after we did currency exchange. So we need them to donate again to cover the loss. Alexander pressed further. Pardon my questions, but what reasons did we have to convert all the donation money to dollars if the protest is going to be done within the country? The leader responded in an intimidating voice. Don't act like you don't know why we asked for the money. You've only been with us for 2 months since the death of your last group leader. If you were chosen to replace your former leader, you should know how these things work. Now, go to the toilet and come back immediately so we can continue the meeting. It was clear that the leader was growing tired of Alexander's enthusiasm and constant questioning. What I don't understand is why I wasn't informed about the other topics, Alexander asked, as he simply ignored William's order as if he hadn't heard it. It appears that we may have overlooked informing your group, Alexander. We assumed that because your group is the weakest, you might feel embarrassed and choose not to attend, said one of the individuals on the table, causing everyone to laugh at his remark. Despite the pretense, the meetings were far from democratic. The group with the most members was considered the king, while the lowest member was viewed as nothing more than a provider of cannon fodder for protests and other activities. The only reason they had not expelled Alexander's group from their coalition was that they needed their numbers. As Alexander heard their response, he stormed out of the meeting room, slamming the door behind him out of frustration. On his way to the bathroom, he kept seeing their grinning faces, which started to irritate him, causing his anger to build up. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore and decided to take action. After entering the bathroom and ensuring the door was locked, he retrieved his phone from his pocket and typed in the email address of the individual who had offered to help their cause. Despite the fact that they desperately needed money, they had originally rejected the offer because they knew that the individual would demand a detailed breakdown of how every cent was spent. Furthermore, accepting the offer would force them to escalate their revolutionary efforts, increasing their risk of being targeted by the dictator who would want to crush the movement decisively. Alexander began composing a message in which he accepted the individual's offer, despite it going against the decision made by the group during their meeting. Upon completing his response, he quickly hit the send button without realizing that he had used his personal phone instead of the burner phone provided to him. His anger had clouded his judgment, causing him to overlook this critical detail. It was a stark reminder of how emotions can impair a person's decision-making abilities. After making sure the email was sent, he left the bathroom and went to wash his hands to make his act believable. Alexander returned to the meeting and sat in his place like nothing had happened. He tried to act as if nothing had happened, but all of this was needles. No one cared to even turn and look at him. They were just happy to continue with their meeting. So, how did William immediately started the meeting the moment Alexander sat down on the table. Meanwhile, Aaron was practicing his runes, and Nova was observing him both in the virtual and real worlds. When she finally received a response from one of the many revolutionary leaders they had contacted. Dear, I hope this email finds you well. I am writing to inform you of our group's decision regarding your offer. Although we received your emails separately, we held a meeting and voted on whether to accept or decline it. Unfortunately, the majority of our group voted against agreeing to your offer, resulting in a vote of 6-1. As a result, they have decided to ghost your emails and not reply to you. However, I am privately informing you of this decision and agreeing to your support if we can come to agreements and negotiations to the terms and conditions. Thank you for your understanding, and I look forward to collaborating with you to achieve our mutual goals. Please let me know if you have any further questions or concerns. Best regards, Alexander. When Nova read the email, she was enraged on Aaron's behalf. How dare they decide to ignore my master's message? It was not the rejection of their offer that upset her, but rather their decision to ghost Aaron and not inform him of their decision. If Alexander had not informed them, it would have delayed their plan. as they would have been waiting for a response from people who had already made a decision. Despite her anger, Nova decided to set it aside and began editing their plan as she waited for Aaron to finish his practice. Since only one group had agreed, she had to revise the actions they had planned to take, assuming that at least 3 groups would agree. She had to make the plan workable under the leadership of only one group, the weakest of them. During this time, Aaron remained unaware of the ongoing events as he continued to practice his runes with all his might. Inside the accelerated simulated universe, Aaron continued his training until he reduced the time of the shield rune's activation to nanoseconds. That's when he stopped his training. It took him a total of 12 hours to reach that level. When he turned around, he found Nova sitting in the same place she was since he began his training, but her face had the expression of her having something to report. "So," he asked, "is there something you want to say?" "Yes, sir. We received a reply from the revolutionary groups," Nova informed him. "A reply and not replies?" Aaron asked curiously, wondering whether Nova made a pronunciation mistake which was practically impossible or not. "Yes, sir. A reply, only one," Nova said as he materialized a hologram with the email sent from Alexander in it in front of Aaron. Aaron didn't ask any more questions as he turned his focus to the email in front of him. While Aaron was reading the email, Nova did nothing but try to find out what was Aaron feeling as a result of receiving this report. "That's still better than nothing," Aaron said, trying to comfort himself after he finished reading the email. "Aren't they the smallest ones among all of the groups?" Aaron asked after he looked through his memories to recall the details about this group, Eden Revolutionaries. "Yes, sir, they are the smallest ones." "Then we have to revise the plan to fit them," Aaron said while rubbing his chin as he was contemplating how to revise the plan. "I have already revised the plan, sir. Please take a look." Nova immediately materialized another hologram in front of Aaron that showed all of the revised plans. "Okay, let's take a look," Aaron said as pushed the hologram with the email aside, while pulling the new one towards him. Then he started reading the revised plan on it. After reading for some time, Aaron could be heard saying good, which made Nova very happy that Aaron approved her revised plans. Though not all of them, but most of it. Aaron kept making small adjustments to the plan, accounting for what Nova might have failed to account due to insufficient data availability about that specific topic, resulting in her being not very knowledgeable about it. After reading the entire plan and editing some of it within 3 hours, he turned to Nova and gave her a thumbs up of approval as he said, "Good plan," resulting in her having a blush on her face, which she immediately hid using her demigod powers within the simulation world before Aaron could see it. "Anything else?" Aaron asked as he pushed the hologram in front of him to the side while getting up from his sitting place. "Yes, sir. Due to the sender failing to cover his tracks, I was able to trace the email to a luxury hotel in the United States. Once I discovered this, I took control of the entire network at the hotel and found out that all of the revolutionary leaders were staying there. From there, I was able to trace their movements and found that most of them have been inside the USA for a considerable amount of time. The only exception is Alexander, who has been spending most of his time in Eden for his activities, but that's maybe because he had only been the leader for 2 months since the previous leader was assassinated and still hasn't got acclimated to having power and exploiting it. So, it might be because he still has the enthusiasm for revolution due to being the youngest and having spent only a short amount of time in a powerful position. "So, you are saying that we should use him for the revolution while he still has his enthusiasm and ideals before he succumbs to the temptation of power?" "Yes, sir. We should also look for ways to contain the other revolutionary group's leaders, to ensure that they don't interfere with our plans due to their fear of losing their source of income that is sustaining their lavish lives." Aaron kept nodding his head, agreeing to what Nova was saying, while thinking of what way he should utilize to shut them up. "For now, we can postpone the buying of their silence plan for a little bit. Before that, we need to go and meet Alexander and have a face-to-face conversation to make sure there are no miscommunications." "Yes, sir. I will begin planning the trip right away." "How many hours have elapsed in the real world?" Aaron inquired, curious about how much time remained until dawn. "You spent 15 hours since you entered the time-accelerated simulated universe, so exactly 3 hours have passed on the outside world." "Looks like I still have time. Then let's continue practicing other runes," Aaron said as he returned to start his practice of runes. As he waited for the dawn to arrive, so that he can start his journey to surprise the shit out Alexander by appearing at his hotel for a meeting without him revealing his current location to Eren. When the morning sun peeked over the horizon, Eren paused his runic training and logged out of the universal simulation to go and prepare himself for the surprise journey. But before he prepared anything for his journey, he needed to do something else first. He laced up his running shoes and headed out for his daily run and other exercises to complete his daily quest. As he pounded the pavement, his mind raced with excitement for his plan finally reaching the starting point. The significance of the meeting between Eren and Alexander cannot be overstated, as it was crucial for Eren to at least have a face-to-face with Alexander before fully committing to the plan. Eren was planning to invest billions of dollars to achieve his goals, and thus, he deemed it necessary to come face-to-face with Alexander before he fully committed. After finishing his daily quest, Eren returned home and quickly showered and dressed for the journey ahead. After he finished his dressing, he picked up his watch and new phone and left for the garage. He didn't need to pick clothes because if he decides to stay longer than a day, he will buy clothes from there. FUCK, I really want to be a billionaire. When he arrived at the garage, he found Donald ready and waiting for him there, as he had been informed by Nova about the abrupt journey last night. Eren went to the sleek black car gleaming in the early morning light. He climbed into the back seat and settled in, the hum of the engine signaling the start of his surprise journey. As they made their way through the city, Eren didn't try to start conversation with anyone, as his eyes were glued to his phone having a conversation with Nova, who was giving him a briefing about the information of Alexander that she managed to collect during the time he was training. After traveling for some time, the car pulled up to a private airfield, and Eren's heart skipped a beat as he caught sight of the sleek jet waiting for him on the tarmac. He was pretty surprised that Nova had decided to rent a private plane for the journey and not just buy him a VIP plane ticket. Thanks, Nova, Eren thanked her as he was being escorted to the private jet. Nova replied by vibrating the watch Eren wore as she couldn't speak when he was within a group of people. 3 hours later, the private jet Eren used for the trip touched down at Tampa International Airport, the closest airport to his intended destination. Once all the necessary airport formalities were taken care of, they set off with a rental car towards the Gulf Coast Beach Resort, where the revolutionary leaders have been staying for the past 3 days and will continue to stay for 1 more week. Eren was well aware of their staying period at the hotel, due to Nova having obtained information regarding the hotel's bookings and accommodation by having hacked into the hotel's network just the day before. Throughout his journey to the hotel, Eren kept his gaze fixed on the stunning scenery outside. He couldn't help but marvel at the natural beauty that surrounded him. The lush greenery and crystal-clear waters of the Gulf Coast were a sight to behold. As his car wound its way through the winding roads, Eren felt a sense of peace and tranquility wash over him. For a moment, he forgot about the meeting that lay ahead and simply allowed himself to be lost in the breathtaking landscape. It was as if time stood still, and all that mattered was the present moment. Damn. But eventually, the car pulled up at the entrance of the beach resort, and Eren was brought back to reality. After taking a deep breath, Eren stepped out of the car and made his way towards the hotel to complete his check-in process. Thanks to Nova's access to the hotel's network, the check-in process went smoothly. She had used her access to reserve the presidential suite of the resort for Eren, which would provide a private space for him to conduct the meetings without being noticed by anyone. Alexander could be seen sitting in his hotel room, surrounded by a stack of documents that had accumulated due to his focus on the previous day's meeting. He decided to take advantage of the rest day and spend his time catching up on the documents. While Alexander was working hard, the other revolutionary leaders were taking advantage of the resort's facilities without caring about their responsibilities. They left all of their work to their secretaries to solve by themselves unless it required money, in which case they had to ask for approval from the leaders. Greedy bastards. As he finished reading the document in his hand and prepared to move on to the next one, his phone suddenly started ringing, interrupting his focus. The caller ID appeared as unknown, adding a mysterious element to the interruption. As soon as Alexander answered the call, he spoke into the phone. Hello? There was a moment of silence on the other end, and Alexander's mind raced with possibilities of who could be calling him and how did they get his number. He wondered if it was a trap or if he was betrayed. Hello, Alexander. Who are you? Alexander asked the moment he received a reply from the other side. There is no need for you to feel anxious or suspicious. My purpose for calling you is to arrange a meeting where we can meet face-to-face to discuss the ways in which we can provide assistance and support to you. The person on the other end of the line quickly shifted the conversation to address Alexander's concerns and fears, hoping that Alexander maintains his composure after observing how he reacted to the call through Alexander's laptop webcam. How did you obtain my phone number? I have no recollection of sharing it with anyone, Alexander asked, still perplexed about how the person on the other end had managed to contact him. It appears that you may have accidentally sent an email from an unsecured device in haste. We were able to trace the email back to its source, which led us to obtain your phone number, explained the caller calmly. Alexander was thoroughly frightened upon hearing the explanation, as it suddenly dawned on him that he had indeed sent those emails from his personal phone, the same phone he used to communicate with his loved ones and close friends. When the man on the other side did not receive a reply from Alexander, he continued, "You don't have to worry about that anymore, Alexander, because the moment you agreed to our offer you fell under our protection, but before we conclude the agreement we need to see each other and have a face-to-face talk. So, when are you free?" asked the man on the other side of the call. When Alexander had the man say he was under their protection, he calmed, albeit small, but not fully, as the idea of it being a trap still lingered behind his brain. "When would it be possible for you to come and meet me? I am available for most of this week." "Then how about now?" The moment the question reached Alexander's mind, the door of his room was knocked, which scared the shit out of Alexander. Startled by the knock, he put down the phone and quickly opened the drawer of his table to retrieve his gun. With the weapon in hand, he pointed it towards the door and asked, "Who is it?" A woman's voice came from behind the door, saying, "Someone has requested that we deliver a message to you. Leave the note under the door. I will retrieve it when I am ready," he said firmly, his finger hovering over the trigger as he prepared for any unexpected event. "Yes, sir," the woman's voice responded before he heard the sound of footsteps getting farther and growing fainter, eventually fading away from the corridor. When he heard the footsteps recede, he approached the door and peered through the peephole. He saw the hotel worker standing by the elevator, waiting for it to arrive. As soon as the elevator arrived, the hotel worker got on it and left, disappearing from Alexander's view. After waiting for a few more seconds, Alexander slowly opened the door while keeping a firm grip on his gun, ready for any unforeseen circumstances. After cautiously peering through the partially open door and seeing that there was no one outside, Alexander opened the door fully and picked up the envelope from the ground. He quickly retrieved it and hastily shut the door behind him. As soon as he sat back down on his chair, the voice from the phone could be heard asking, "Did you receive our invitation?" It was then that he realized he had left the call running. "Was that you? And how did you find out which room I'm staying in?" Alexander asked, his tone laced with suspicion. "You'll find out later. But for now, inside that envelope, there's a key that will grant you access to the presidential suite through the elevator. Come here, and we'll have a detailed conversation," the caller said before abruptly ending the call, leaving Alexander to contemplate whether he should heed the caller's request or not. As he sat there, his mind racing with doubts and fears, Alexander couldn't help but wonder what kind of trouble he was getting himself into. But something inside him told him that he had to go through with it, that he had to take this chance. With a deep breath, he stood up from his desk, picked up the envelope with the key, and made his way to the elevator. He had no idea what was waiting for him on the other side, but a gut feeling kept telling him it was his opportunity to achieve his dream. Ting! Alexander was jolted out of his deep thoughts by the sound of the elevator indicating that he had reached his destination. The fact that he reached his destination earlier than expected, without the elevator making any stops, caught him off guard. This was particularly unusual given the size of the resort he was in. What he didn't know was that one of the advantages of staying in a presidential suite is the privilege of using a special card key that grants exclusive access to the elevator leading to the suite. If you happen to be the only occupant of the elevator, it will not make any stops on other floors, even if someone else has called it, until it reaches the designated presidential suite. Once he regained his composure, he adjusted his suit and checked that his gun was still in place at his waist. He then took a step forward and exited the elevator, walking straight into the presidential suite. "Welcome," a voice echoed through the expansive suite welcoming him. As Alexander looked towards the direction of the voice, he saw a tall and attractive man walking towards him with his hand outstretched for a handshake. Alexander reciprocated the handshake while simultaneously scanning the suite for any other occupants. The man noticed his apprehension and quickly reassured him, "You don't have to be afraid. I'm the only one here." Upon realizing that his apprehension was noticed, Alexander attempted to conceal his true intentions by saying, "Oh, I apologize for the misunderstanding. I was just admiring the beauty of the suite, as it is my first time being inside one." Alexander attempted to steer the conversation away from his previous actions and also inquire about the man's identity by saying, "By the way, I'm Alexander. And you are?" Realizing that he had neglected to introduce himself, the man replied apologetically, "Oh, pardon my manners. My name is Aaron Michael." He then proceeded to formally introduce himself. Aaron was quite nervous to meet Alexander, but thankfully he managed to calm himself down and act confident in front of him. He met Alexander and shook his hand with ease, seemingly unconcerned despite the knowledge that Alexander was carrying a loaded gun. "Shall we have a seat before we begin our conversation? This may take a while. I hope you have no other commitments for today," Aaron suggested, despite being aware that Alexander was on a break and had no scheduled meetings. Aaron's intention behind this act was to reassure Alexander that he did not know everything about him, as he understood how unsettling that knowledge could be for someone. "Of course," Alexander agreed to Aaron's suggestion, and the two began walking towards the luxurious and comfortable-looking couches. "Would you like something to drink?" Aaron asked as they settled into their seats. "No, thank you. Can we proceed directly to the topic?" Alexander replied, indicating a desire to get down to business as he was still nervous about this entire ordeal. "All right then," Aaron replied, and he promptly began discussing the topic at hand. "There isn't much that's new or different from what we included in our offer to help. The purpose of this meeting is solely for me to have a face-to-face conversation with you before I decide to commit to our agreement," Aaron explained without beating around the bush. "Before you decide?" Alexander repeated, emphasizing the word "you." He was wondering whether Aaron was the one who would be providing the help, or if he was merely a representative of the actual helper. "Yes, me," Aaron confirmed. "Although I may not look like it, I'm a billionaire." When Aaron finished explaining and saw the dumbfounded expression on Alexander's face, he couldn't help but chuckle. "I know it's hard to believe that I'm a billionaire at such a young age, but it's true," Aaron said, noticing the disbelief on Alexander's face. "Excuse me for asking this, but how old are you?" Alexander inquired about Aaron's age, curious about how young he could possibly be. 23, Aaron replied confidently. Upon hearing Aaron's age, Alexander decided to move past the topic and focus on their agreement, as the age of the person did not matter to him as long as they were able to provide the necessary help. "But why would you want to help us?" Alexander asked, still trying to understand Aaron's motive behind offering to help. "To be completely honest, I am not helping you out of pure compassion or any sentimental attachment. Instead, I am assisting you because your success in reaching your goals and fulfilling your promises will enable me to achieve something that my country has unjustly deprived me of." "What is the essential thing that has been unjustly taken away from you, to the extent that you have opted to assist a rebel group in order to reclaim it?" Aaron replied curtly, "Ownership and control," without providing further details. However, a tinge of anger could be detected in his tone. As Alexander detected a hint of anger in Aaron's response, he realized that asking for more information might not yield any fruitful results. Hence, he made a conscious decision to steer the conversation back to the main topic at hand. "Could you please clarify how you intend to aid us in accomplishing our goal?" "A great question indeed. My contribution will comprise both financial support and infrastructural support. Although the former might seem somewhat helpful, the latter is actually more significant," Aaron explained. He felt compelled to elaborate further as he noticed a surprised expression on Alexander's face upon hearing that Aaron would be providing them with infrastructural support. "Could you please elaborate on that?" Alexander inquired, eager to understand why Aaron considered the infrastructural support aspect of his assistance more valuable than the monetary one. It would be more beneficial if you were to read and comprehend it yourself, rather than me explaining it to you, Aaron responded as he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He began to fiddle with it, pretending to search for something to show Alexander. In reality, he was waiting for Nova to send Alexander the document containing the summary with the details on how his infrastructural support will be helpful to them. Tinjiding. Alexander's phone beeped, prompting a reaction from him. Aaron noticed this and said, "Feel free to take a look. It's from me." Upon hearing Aaron claim that he had sent him something, Alexander hastily retrieved his phone from his jacket to see what Aaron had sent him. When Alexander unlocked his phone, he discovered that Aaron had indeed sent him a file. Upon closer inspection, he realized that the file was quite lengthy. "You can go ahead and read it now. We have enough time," Aaron said. Alexander didn't require any further prompting as he had already begun reading the document as soon as he opened it. As Alexander began to peruse the document, the only words that escaped his mouth were, "Holy shit." The phrase, "holy shit," continued to emanate from Alexander's lips as he delved deeper into the document. After half an hour of intense reading, Alexander finally finished perusing the file. Excitement was evident in his voice as he eagerly inquired, "Is this plan for real?" His tone resembled that of a child who was eagerly awaiting confirmation from his father regarding the purchase of a new game console. "Yes, the plan is real and will be implemented, provided that you still agree to our conditions by the end of this meeting," Aaron confirmed. With that being said, the conversation continued with a positive and uplifting vibe, as Alexander began to believe that this was not a trap. The summary of the plan had given him newfound hope and optimism, which was reflected in his demeanor as they continued their discussion. "He left, sir." Nova's voice came from the phone the moment she saw Alexander get into the elevator and it started to descend. "What is your evaluation of him?" he asked as he deactivated the shield rune that had been active and surrounding him throughout the meeting. Yes, Aaron didn't completely trust Alexander. After all, he had just met him for the first time, and he knew that he had a loaded gun with him. Knowing the pain of being shot firsthand, he didn't want to take any risks. "I was able to discern from the conversation that he truly desires the revolution to occur in order to liberate his fellow citizens from their dreadful living conditions." "You seem to have taken a liking to him," he remarked with a smile on his face, observing the way she had spoken about Alexander. "Since we're going ahead with the plan regardless, it's better to work with those who truly care about their country. It'll be killing two birds with one stone." Nova explains why he seemed to have taken a liking to Alexander. "And it will also lessen the guilt that you will feel once you see the bloodshed and pain resulting from your action or the action of those you helped," Nova added, but she didn't voice it loudly for Aaron to hear. It all remained within her quantum RAM, QRAM. She knew Aaron how would feel because she had access to his brain data, which he had downloaded from the virtual headgear with his permission. From her understanding of Aaron's personality, gained through analyzing his brain, she knew that he would feel guilty when he sees the bloodshed that resulted from his support. Alexander's genuine concern for his country and its people could be the key to helping Aaron overcome his guilt after seeing the positive changes that resulted from his help, which was a welcoming thing for Nova, who cared about her master more than anything. Alexander returned to his room late at night, exhausted from the long conversation he had with Aaron. Despite his fatigue, his face shone brightly, indicating that the conversation had gone well. He collapsed onto his bed, feeling like a log, and struggled to keep himself awake. His eyes grew heavier and heavier until he could no longer resist and fell asleep in his suit.